Number 3 from the Vestron Collector Series, the Waxwork Collection, both directed by Anthony Hickox. The first one being released in 1988, starring Zach Gillikin, David Warner, and Deborah Foreman. Waxwork is about this new wax museum in town. It's run by David Warner's character, and all the displays in this museum are based off of classic horror films like The Mummy, Dracula, Night of the Living Dead, and several others. So one day, Sarah and her friends stumble onto the new Waxwork building. They end up meeting the creepy owner, and he invites them and some friends to come to a special midnight private showing he's having. And he's very specific when he says only 6 people can come. Later that night, Sarah got that group of friends together. They head off to the museum, get invited in by this little butler guy, and start looking at these displays. Side note, this is where you notice the film is kind of misleading. Like, this is supposed to be a wax museum, but none of the characters on display are made of wax. You can clearly tell it's just actors trying to stand extremely still. But story-wise, there's a slight reason for that, and that's because these aren't just any regular displays. If you get too close to them and step or reach over the red rope in front of them, then kind of like a portal, you get sucked into that scene that specific display is based on, and if you die, then now you become a victim of that scene, and that display is now complete. Zach Galifian's character Mark noticed his friends aren't around, so he figures maybe they got bored or scared or something and left. Then he finds out the next morning that they never came home last night. Now he's thinking maybe they're kidnapped and they're still at the museum, so he goes to the cops. This detective gets involved, so him and Mark go to the museum, and Mark has to stay outside. The detective's walking around. He notices something's a little off about these displays, but just treats it like everything's normal, pretty much. Tells Mark to just go home, and his friends will probably just show back up later. The detective is then seen in his office looking at some missing persons flyers on his desk. Now he's getting a little suspicious, so he sneaks back into the museum, takes a sample off of one of the characters on a display that's already complete, then goes over to the non-complete mummy display, gets sucked in, and I'll let you guess if he survives or not. Now, the reason the owner needs all these displays complete is because when that time comes, then they will all come to life and wreak havoc on Earth. After Mark and Sarah made this big discovery about the owner of the wax museum, they go back to the museum, and Mark ends up in the Night of the Living Dead display. Soon enough, he finds out that if you don't believe what's going on, then it's not real, and he is able to break out of that display alive. So as you can guess, the displays eventually come to life. Mark and Sarah then end up burning down the wax museum, but something from one of those displays ends up surviving the fire. Now, there's quite a few big scenes and displays that I haven't even mentioned here, and that's simply because I could talk about this movie for hours. And I still got to tell you about the sequel. Waxwork is definitely a movie I recommend checking out. It's got some comedy, pays homage to classic monsters, and has lots of gore. I would rate this film at a 4 out of 5 gems. Waxwork 2, Lost in Time, released in 1992. Zach Gillikin ends up reprising his role as Mark, but Sarah is now played by Monica Schneider instead of Deborah Foreman. That's because Deborah and the director Anthony were dating during the first movie. They had a rough breakup, and she did not want to come back. Now, regardless on the actor switch, Waxwork 2 picks up right where the first one left off. Mark and Sarah running away from the burning down wax museum with a severed hand following them. Sarah makes it home. Now she has to explain to her abusive stepfather, played by the famous George Buck Flower, why she's late. After things calm down, that severed hand makes its way into the house, kills the stepfather, and with Sarah being the only other person at home, now she's the main suspect. For the rest of the movie, Mark and Sarah now have to prove to a judge and pretty much the whole city why she's not the killer. This is where a character that I did not mention from the first film comes in. His name is Sir Wilfred, and he has a little cameo in this video that was left over for Mark to watch. Now, in this video, he's talking about this little device that will end up helping Mark and Sarah travel through time to defeat evil and get the proof they need that Sarah's innocent for the murder and what happened with the Waxwork Museum. Just like the first film, the places that Mark and Sarah travel to are scenes from even more classic films like Frankenstein, Alien, Nosferatu, and several others. Bruce Campbell, probably the most famous B-movie actor ever, even has a small role in this film. Waxwork 2 is completely its own movie. Other than Mark, Sarah, and Sir Wilfrid's cameo, this film is completely different and doesn't even have a wax museum in it, other than what they showed from the end of the first film. It's got way more comedy and pokes a lot of fun at the classic films these characters travel to. You definitely don't want to overthink this film at all, because there's plenty of times where things won't make sense or you'll be wondering, what the hell is going on? But that doesn't mean you should not give this film a chance. I would rate Waxwork 2 at a 3 out of 5 gems. Have you seen Waxwork or Waxwork 2? If so, which one's your favorite? If not, are you willing to give them a chance? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next